All right, good afternoon. We're going to switch things around a little bit. We'll start with our guests because I'm still waiting for some material to come in to me. So we are delighted to be joined, as you know, by David Gressly, who is our UN resident and humanitarian coordinator for Yemen. And he's here to update you on the situation in Yemen and the tanker and everything else. David, welcome, please.
Thank you.
It's on.
It's on. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everyone here, and looking forward to the exchange. Really, I want to speak primarily about the FSO Safar tanker, which I know has been in the news frequently over past years, and give you an update on where I think we are on trying to solve that particular problem. We know that there's a lot of competing stories right now, many with bad news, but my team has been working very hard with others over the past 6 months to defuse what's aptly been called a time bomb sitting off Yemen's Red Sea coast. I'm optimistic that the Safar will end up as a positive news story. We have a new United Nations coordinated plan to address the imminent threat of a major oil spill from the Safar. If it were to happen, the spill would unleash a massive ecological and humanitarian catastrophe centered on a country already decimated by more than 7 years of war. The environmental damage could affect states across the Red Sea. The economic impact of disrupted shipping would be felt across the region. The plan, which I will outline for you, has the support of the parties to the conflict and other key stakeholders. Senior UN management and members of the Security Council are also supportive, but we're not there yet. Without funding over the next 6 weeks or so, the project will not begin on time, and this time bomb will continue to tick. My particular concern is really we need to finish this operation by the end of September to avoid the turbulent winds and currents that start in the latter part of the year, in October, November, December, increasing the risk of a breakup, and also increasing the risk in conducting any operation. So timing is tight. In March, a UN-led mission to the Ras Issa Peninsula, near to where the Safar is anchored, confirmed that the 45-year-old supertanker is rapidly decaying. It is at imminent risk of spilling a massive amount of oil due to leakages or an explosion. Just as an example, normally the inert air that is used to inhibit explosions has long disappeared. The systems that produce that inert air are no longer functioning. So an explosion is much more likely. In 1988, the Safar was converted into a floating storage and offloading facility, an FSO, and brought to where it is today. It holds over 1 million barrels of oil, 1.1 million to be exact, 4 times the amount of the Exxon Valdez spill. Production, offloading, and maintenance operations on the Safar halted in 2015 because of the war, and the vessel is now beyond repair. A significant spill would devastate fishing communities on Yemen's Red Sea coast. 500,000 people working in the industry there have 1.7 million dependents. 200,000 livelihoods could be instantly wiped out by a spill. Whole families would be exposed to life-threatening toxins. A major oil spill would likely close, at least temporarily, the ports of Hodeidah and Sarif. These are essential to bring in food, fuel, and life-saving supplies. 17 million people are food insecure in Yemen already as we speak. The environmental impact on water, reefs, and life-supporting mangroves would be severe. Saudi Arabia, Eritrea, Djibouti, and Somalia are also at risk. Cleanup costs are estimated to cost approximately $20 billion. It does not count the cost of environmental damage across the Red Sea or the billions that could be lost due to disruptions to shipping through the Bab el-Mandab Strait, which is also a passageway to the Suez Canal. Think of the Ever Given. The good news is that the United Nations has a viable plan to address the threat. The plan is supported by the government of Yemen. In Aden, as you know, I signed a memorandum of understanding with the Sana'a-based de facto authorities which control the area where the vessel is located. The Memorandum of Understanding established a framework for cooperation in which the Sana'a-based authorities have committed to facilitating the success of the project. The plan includes 2 tracks: installation of a long-term replacement vessel for the FSO Safar, within a target period of 18 months once we mobilize the resources, and a 4-month emergency operation to eliminate the immediate threat by transferring the oil to a safe temporary vessel. The SAFR and the temporary vessel would remain in place until the oil is transferred to the permanent replacement vessel, at which point the existing SAFR would be towed to a yard and sold for salvage. The cost. The 2 tracks of the operational plan will proceed simultaneously. Raising funds for both is critical to deliver a sustained solution to the threat. The technical work to establish the costs associated with an appropriate replacement vessel are well underway. We should have that cost soon. We have also established the cost for the emergency operation at approximately $80 million. This includes the salvage operation, the lease of a very large crude carrier to hold the oil, and crew and maintenance for 18 months, the period of time required to get a replacement in place. We have also provided handouts that give you more details. Next week, I'll lead a mission to donor capitals in the Gulf region to discuss the plan and seek their support. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, which is a critical stakeholder in support of the UN's effort, will host a pledging event in the coming weeks, in the month of May. The plan's success hinges on donor commitments of funds now to begin work by the beginning of June. Waiting beyond then would mean delaying the start of the project by several months, leaving this time bomb continued to tick. That's why I'm reminding the world of the imminent threat posed by the FSO SAFR, highlighting the viable UN-coordinated plan to address it, and stressing that we will not succeed without urgent funding. Then just a couple of comments on other issues related to Yemen. Obviously, the recent announcement of the truce is very welcome, not only for improving the humanitarian situation on the ground, but also it creates a conducive environment for the operation I've just discussed. So I'm happy things are moving in that direction, and we will continue to support the efforts of the UN Special Envoy in moving forward with the peace process there. In many ways, the humanitarian situation will not end until the war ends. It's extremely important that this process succeed. And then finally, I will be happy to take any questions you might have on the humanitarian situation. We are looking to raise over $4 billion this year to meet the needs of the people of Yemen. It declines, the welfare of the people decline every year, and the needs increase every year. The funding, however, is hard to maintain. We have received $1.3 billion out of the $4+ billion that we're seeking. And then just a couple of days ago, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia announced an additional $300 million to that 1.3. So we're still at 1.6 billion, which is a start, but it's not the full requirements that we need to meet the needs of the people of Yemen. Peace is necessary, but we also need to keep people alive and in a dignified way as that peace process goes forward. So I think I'll conclude with that, but I'm happy to take questions as well on the humanitarian situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Edie?
David, thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association. Welcome. Thank you for doing this briefing on an issue which we've all followed very closely. I'm Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Could you give us, when you're talking about a replacement vessel, are we talking about tens of millions, over 100 million? Is there some sort of
Range?
guesstimate that you can give us? And more importantly, on this possibility of an explosion, and you talk about, a ticking time bomb. How worried are you that all of this could happen before this this process of transferring oil gets through? Thanks.
Thank you.
Please, David.
Yeah. The replacement vessel, I want to be a little cautious because we don't want to affect the market value of such a vessel, but it would probably be in the order of magnitude of, let's say, $25 million. So just to give you an order of magnitude. But that would be that will have to be based on market prices as we go forward. And just a piece of information to go with that, what's required is to get a used vessel that probably is no longer appropriate for transport of oil, but still suitable for a storage facility, but it'll have to be modified because there's a large piece of equipment that's attached to the bow that attaches it to the pipeline, basically. And that's what takes the 18 months. Otherwise, we would have gone straight to that. So just to give that little detail in addition. On the issue of am I worried, I'm extremely worried that it will break up or explode as we speak. It's the team that went to Rasisa last month confirmed with discussions with people on the ground that the vessel is deteriorating and they remain quite concerned. There is a skeleton crew on board of about a half a dozen crew members that do try to keep the vessel going, and I think they've done actually quite heroic work over the years to keep this thing from falling apart. But there's a limit to what they can do with the hardly any resources that they have. And as I mentioned, the explosion possibility is very real. There are no inert gases inside the chambers that hold the oil, and therefore it becomes the opportunity for flammable explosion is quite real. The other issue, of course, is just the breakup of the vessel, and that's why I worry particularly about the months of October, November, and December. When the currents become more active, the probability rises considerably that the breakup would happen at that point in time. So the window really is now. We might get lucky again like we've been lucky in the past, but as we know, luck runs out at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Philippe Rater, AFP.
Thank you very much for this briefing. Can you be a little bit more precise about the donor meeting? You say May, but can you tell us not the day, but is it the end of May, beginning of May, middle of May? Is it the Netherlands who are going to organize it? And the amount you are looking for this donor meeting is $25 million or more?
We will be looking initially for at least $80 million to do the initial operation. What we need are firm commitments for that. UNDP I haven't mentioned, but they will be doing the procurement. The procurement is ready basically now to go forward. It just needs the funding. So once the funding is available, they can start the actual work. And they don't need the cash in hand so much as they need a firm commitment that the money will be coming. So that's all that's really required at this point. The date, we've just had discussions with the Netherlands, who would like to co-host this with the United Nations. I hesitate to give a date. I know what they're suggesting, but I would like them to announce that date. But it will be in the first half of May.
Thank you. Kirsten Salome, Al Jazeera.
Thanks. I know this has been a project a long time in the making, and there's been a lot of starts and stops. How confident are you that you have obviously the ceasefire is a big deal, but how confident are you about the situation on the ground going forward and the relations with the relevant parties on the ground?
Well, I think, let me speak about the government of Yemen first. They're very, very supportive of the approach. They understand the environmental consequences, and basically their message to me is, whatever it takes to get it done, let's just get it done. So that's very clear. And that's the same message I get from other countries in the region that might be affected by this. And so they're overall supportive of the issue. But of course, your reference is more towards the authorities in Sana'a. And so let me conclude on that. I think what's important to understand is their perspective and expectations of this, which is to have a permanent replacement vessel in place or an equivalent capacity. And I think as long as they see that that's moving in that direction, they will be supportive. They understand the environmental consequences, but they have twin objectives. As long as they see the twin objectives being met, I don't expect major problems. I expect minor problems as we go forward. It is a conflict, even with the truce, and security concerns will always be high. We will place somebody in Hodeidah to work with the salvage company to help overcome these kinds of security concerns that may come up, as well as our work in Sana'a. So we'll try to balance things on the ground. The final thing I'll say is I believe we have a strong consensus in SANA to move forward with this specific plan. They're the ones that wanted to sign the memorandum of understanding. They're the ones that said, we really want this done. So they were the ones that came to me and said, let's sign this. So I do believe we have a window of opportunity to do it. I'm optimistic, but you'll never know for sure until it's done. But this is the best, I think, option that we've seen so far. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a couple questions on the screen. James Reinl, The National. James?
Hi there. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the briefing, Mr. Gressly. You said you're going to be doing a fundraising trip around the Gulf next week. Could you tell us which capitals you're going to? And given that some of these capitals are of countries that are essentially in a ceasefire of a war with the Houthis, do you feel that asking them for millions of dollars, some of which is going to be buying a replacement vessel for their military enemy, is going to be a bit of a stretch?
To answer the first part of your question, I'll be going to Riyadh, to Abu Dhabi, Doha, and Kuwait for this particular round. In terms of the second part of your question, I think everybody sees the environmental consequences of inaction and non-funding as the most important aspect. And I have yet to run into any real concern over the concept of a replacement vessel. It's not a military asset, and everybody understands so far that the cost of that vessel is minuscule compared to the potential cost of the 20 billion cleanup that I've mentioned. And that doesn't even touch on the other issues of the impact on livelihoods, et cetera, and shipping. And certainly those countries that would be affected, including Saudi Arabia, see this as extremely important to their own national interests. So I think this is an area where there is a commonality of interest, and if we can keep those commonalities together, I think we will ultimately succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Abdelhamid?
Thank you, Mr. Gressly. This is Abdelhamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. I have two questions. First, on the truce. How did you see the Yemeni people receiving the truce? Are they optimistic? Do you see them interacting now with each other in a more peaceful manner? How do they behaving in this month of Ramadan, welcoming the truce? If you can give us some feedback. And my second question about the donors. There are some Gulf states who used to donate very generously, and they either stop donating completely, or if they chip in, they just give some small money. How do you explain that? We don't understand why they are behaving this way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On the issue of the truce, of course, it's extremely welcome among the Yemeni people. At 7 years of war, people just want the war to end, and this is the first ray of hope that they've seen in a long time in this regard. So yes, it's very well received, and it's an opportunity that everybody hopes will be fully seized by the parties to come to a lasting peace settlement. On the donor issue, sometimes we had the pledging conference, and yes, you're correct. In the region, nothing was really pledged, but we have seen that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has come forward with 300 million as an initial pledge. We'll continue to discuss for potential additional funding. And we've had other discussions with countries in the Gulf region who've expressed interest in funding during the course of the year. So I think we will see more funding come in. There is a bit of fatigue. The common concern I hear is, humanitarian assistance is not moving us anywhere. But that, unfortunately, is the nature of humanitarian assistance. It's a Band-Aid until a political settlement can be reached. So It's really a question of dealing with the political aspects if you want a way out of the problem of providing continuous humanitarian assistance. But we need to talk through these issues. Sometimes there are questions over the delivery of assistance, and those are legitimate questions to ask. And so we are working much more closely with the countries in the region so that they get more information about how we're managing the assistance on the ground to give them the confidence to continue to provide assistance. And I'm not going to dwell on this very long, but I will say among the various things that we've done to try to build up donor confidence broadly, not just in the Gulf, is that we've been able to carry out for the first time in this conflict a comprehensive set of assessments covering all 333 districts. We were able to negotiate access for that. That gives us for the first time a firm evidence base of the actual humanitarian situation in the country. It's examples like this that I think will help keep the confidence levels required to continue to receive the level of assistance that is necessary in Yemen. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take one more question from the screen. Margaret Bashir, Voice of America. Maggie?
Hi, Mr. Gressly. Thanks so much. It's nice to see you back in the briefing room.
Thanks.
My question is, the GCC countries, I mean, they're all oil producers, so have you explored borrowing a vessel from one of them? I mean, I don't see why you have to go out and spend all this money when you're dealing with oil-producing countries who all have a stake in cleaning this up. And the other option is, have you spoken to Iran at all? I mean, as the patron of the Houthis and a player in this scenario.
On the first part, I'm sorry.
I mean,
Yeah. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
no, I was just meant for Iran, in other words, since they're also an oil producer, perhaps they have a vessel or something you could use as a holding tank.
We would, of course, welcome an in-kind contribution of a vessel or any other in-kind contributions that would assist. It doesn't really matter to us, and we have put that on the table as well as options, and that'll be a part of the discussions we will continue with, not only in the region but outside the region. And we're also in contact with different maritime associations that may be in a position to influence these kinds of decisions. So yes, that would be something that we would welcome, in fact, because it would simplify a number of things if we were to get something in kind. All member states, including Iran, we are happy and continue to discuss with this issue. There is a strong interest in it, and we continue that engagement. We've done a very broad dissemination of our operational plan to all of the member states in the region, so that they get a clear idea of how this is going to go forward. So we keep that engagement going. When we find something solid to follow up on in terms of contributions, in kind or financial, we will certainly pursue that. I think we'll have a better understanding of where we stand on the financial mobilization after this trip into the region. And we'll see what kind of deficit we have at that point in time and where we need to focus our efforts in the next weeks before the conference in May. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one more person on the line. Iftikhar Ali from Associated Press of Pakistan. Iftikhar.
Thank you, Steph. Sir, do you have any measures or plans in place to contain the damage should this vessel start leaking or explode or break up?
Sure, that's a good question.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's a very good question, in fact, because the danger is every day. It won't necessarily wait for the plan to be implemented. Particularly through UNDP, we've been working to set up contingency plans, both headquartered in Aden as well as in Sana'a in the event of a spill. And a lot of work has gone in to prepare for such a spill. The financial requirements for that, obviously, that's not something we have in hand at this point in time. But the planning for that, it would largely be oriented, I'll be frank, based on technical studies that have been done and given to us. The ability to contain the oil spill is probably not great in that area, given the currents and the nature of the oil itself. It's light and disperses easily. So the focus would probably be on onshore cleanup on the coast of Yemen in particular. And that's our contingency plan is focused on Yemen. But other countries may have to do the same thing, and I do know that we've been in contact with them. They have their own contingency plans to put in place if the spill were to occur. So that remains a concern for us, but we have good work already well underway in that regard. Also in coordination with OCHA in terms of coordination of support to the area if there were such a spill. But we're working very hard to avoid that scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David, I think you are freed from your duties.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for coming, and please do keep us posted. You can always be beamed in here from wherever you are.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, David. Take care. Cheers. I'm going to ask you, excuse me for 2 seconds.